Today in our passage, we see an illustration of what true devotion to God looks like when a widow gives two very small copper coins as an offering to God. Now, as we read about this story, we have to understand that in Jesus' day, the process for giving in the temple was done in a very interesting way. The priest didn't pass the plate at a specific time and ask people to give to support the work of the temple. Instead, there were 13 receptacles set up around the temple where people could deposit their gifts. In some ways, this sort of giving strategy sounds a little bit like how we handle giving here at Brookville Road Community Church. We don't pass a plate. Instead, we allow people to handle their giving by putting slots in the walls throughout the building where people can go and drop their tithes and offerings in these slots. Now, the big difference between how we handle giving at BRCC and how they handled it at the temple is that our method is intended to promote a more private experience of giving between the person and God, while the temple made giving a very public matter. Let me explain what I'm getting at. The 13 receptacles where people could give in the temple had two parts. On the bottom to hold the gifts was a wooden box. On the top of the box, there was a brass shaped trumpet where people could drop in their gifts. Now, as I described the setup, we can't forget that in Jesus' day, they weren't using paper money. All of their money was in the form of metal coins. This meant that when people dropped their money in the offering receptacle, their metal coins would clang around in the metal trumpet, and the noise would reverberate throughout the temple, and everyone would know whether you had given a big or small gift. I guess in some ways, this method of giving reminds me of a time when I went to a different church and experienced a method of giving that I had never experienced before. Instead of the ushers passing a plate down each row, this church had the ushers dismiss each row to walk up to the front of the church where the pastor was holding an offering basket, and you would put your gift in the basket while it was in the pastor's hands. In this way, the pastor of the church could see who was giving and who wasn't. Now, at the time when I participated in that church service, I had two overwhelming thoughts. The first was that I was so grateful that I'd actually brought some cash with me, because I usually don't have any. And second, this method of giving was tremendously awkward. I felt very self conscious that the pastor of the church knew exactly what I had given, and I was glad that that's not how we do things at BRCC. But despite that initial negative reaction uh, through the years, as I've thought back on that experience, my perspective has somewhat changed. Now, I want to be clear, I still prefer the way that we handle giving at BRCC, but I have come to realize that there is some value of recognizing that someone is always watching us and knows how much we're giving. And I'm not talking about the church treasurer or the government. God is always watching, and He knows exactly how much we are giving. And He also knows how much we could or should be giving. Why was it that I was so concerned with what that pastor, who I had never met before and I've never met since, why was I concerned with what he thought of my giving when I tend to be so casual and dispassionate with what the creator of the universe thinks? Here's the thing. Ultimately, as our passage today reminds us, Jesus sees what each of us gives and he knows what's in our hearts. This is why Jesus could tell his disciples, this poor widow has put in more than all the others. All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. As followers of Jesus, I want to ask you, how are you doing with your giving? I don't know what your financial condition is, and I don't know how much you're giving. But when we give to the work of the Lord, we have a chance to partner with God to advance his kingdom. And so, my question isn't to make you feel guilty, it's to give you perhaps just a reminder that you have an opportunity to partner with God. Whether your gift is large or small, you can be sure that God is watching. And I believe that just like Jesus, he is looking for an opportunity to celebrate our generosity. God bless you guys. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.